Hello and welcome to Small Business Big Impact. I'm your host, Jayanne Guilfoy, the CEO of Meridian Credit Union. One thing I've learned from working with entrepreneurs across the country is that some of the most impactful businesses don't start with a flashy idea. They start with hard work, lived experience, and curiosity about how things could be done better. Today's conversation is about exactly that. Seeing opportunities where others see something messy, overlooked, or even undesirable, and building a business with purpose from the ground up. My guest today is Shane Harker, the founder of Rethink Resource. Shane started his career in transportation at just 15 years old and went on to work across waste management, operations, and leadership before launching a company focused on rethinking waste as a resource. I appreciate that Shane is hardworking. At his core, he has been able to take that hard work and applies to something that delivers a sense of purpose. That really resonates with me because I too have had a long career of working hard and feel like I got a huge gift when I was able to take that work ethic and add purpose to it. Shane Harker is determined to change the world one piece of garbage at a time. He's the founder and president of Rethink Resource, a waste diversion company that's revolutionizing how we treat trash. Shane began working on a transportation dock at age 15 and built a 25-year career in trucking, sales, and operations before founding Rethink. Today, his company has diverted more than 10 million pounds of waste from landfills and is paving the way forward to a circular economy. Shane, great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I mentioned in your intro that you started working in transportation at 15. So I'd love to hear more about that and how did that early hands-on experience shape your work ethic and perspective on the industries you later transformed?
So my dad's a retired now, truck driver, part-time in school, started working on the dock and on the weekend and then more opportunities. And it was really old school. Like the boss was going in on the weekend. So you went on the weekend to learn what they were doing and you never said no. And you did whatever it took. The owner of that company, Monty Martin, was my first mentor. He gave me this medallion that says, whatever it takes. That was sort of the motto of the company to service the customer. And so that's the way we were bred and growing up. And so then I became a supervisor and went to college for a little bit, but it really wasn't my thing. And so I climbed my way up in that company and got into operations management. I did actually at one point get my license and drive truck for a little bit. It's kind of a rite of passage, if you will. And I did that for 15 years or so. And then a friend of mine went off to a bigger American company because this is like a Toronto-born transport company, which is much larger now, but it was Ontario, Quebec. It was always aspirational. I wanted to learn sort of the big business side of things, and that was sort of a natural progression for me.
That's really cool. I had this conversation with somebody else this week, that motto of you can't get ahead without working hard. So I appreciate you saying that. I think that's an important point for people. And so how is that translated for you into work? What does working hard mean?
I think small business entrepreneurs are a little bit different than the average person, especially in our line of business, in the waste business. So we have workers that are working in dangerous environments and cold environments. We deal with organics and liquid waste and stuff freezes. You're always sort of on. I don't have any problems falling asleep at night because I'm kind of exhausted from the day, but then you wake up in the middle of the night and you're like, oh, I forgot this. Actually, what I would say is when I was younger, it was working hard. And I'll go back to actually my first mentor, Monty. One day I'm sweeping the dock. We're waiting for these trucks to come in. He's walking out on the dock and he's walking fast. I'm sweeping and he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, this guy owns a company. He doesn't know. Like, I'm sweeping the dock. I'm like, what's it look like I'm doing? I'm sweeping the dock. And I wasn't trying to be smart, and he said, but look, there's a trail there. Like, is that the best? And I said, well, like in an hour, the forklifts are going to go across. There's going to be tire marks all over the place. He goes, yeah, but don't you want to be the best at what it is that you do? And so like working hard is important, but working smart is important and doing the best that you can at it. So I think it's more than just working hard. Like 100%, if you don't know, you have to work hard and put the reps in. But the more you put the reps in, the easier things become and the more successful you become.
Yeah, I have a big mantra that I've had. I read a book when I was in my 20s, and it was called Do What You Love and the Money Will Follow. And kind of the premise behind that, I think you just described, is whatever you're doing right now, try to be the best at it. Find a system, find a process, and don't just think of it as a job, but think of it as what are you actually learning about right now that's going to take you to that next place that you want to go to, right? So the second question was you talked about this, you joined one of the Canada's largest waste haulers, and at the time you thought garbage was gross. But then something shifted once you started on the job. What opened your eyes to the opportunities that got you started on this new journey?
Company had some environmental initiatives. They shipped me out to Halifax to turn the site around out there. And it was the first time I was exposed to anaerobic digestion. Most waste, if it gets picked up and it's not in a green bin or recycling, in Toronto, it gets trucked to Michigan. 80% of the commercial waste gets trucked to Michigan and goes to landfills. And so while I was out there, I was exposed to an anaerobic digester. And for those that don't know what that is, it's a big tank, and a lot of them started on farms and they put cow manure in it. There's microbes in there that eat, and then you add organic waste to that. And like your stomach, it creates gas. And so then the biogas, and it's 60 to 70% natural gas, and that can be used to generate electricity. So a lot of the stuff that we pick up in Toronto, the grease trap waste, there's a digester at the zoo. So they mix the animal bedding from the zoo with haulers like myself that'll bring organics or grease trap in, and it goes into this big tank and it creates this gas and it generates electricity to put back on the grid. And more recently, what they're starting to do with this is they're cleaning up the gas because there's other gases in there, and they're putting it back into the natural gas pipeline. And it's called renewable natural gas. So instead of taking the fossil fuel natural gas, you're getting this from a waste byproduct. So I was exposed to that out in Halifax. And I was like, wow, this is the amazing thing. Like, why doesn't everybody do this? And there's so many complexities in the waste business. But that was really the bug that got me. That was really the spark of, I want to say 5 years later when Rethink Resource started. And the idea was rethink waste as a resource.
I love it. So you were doing really well in your career and learning lots. What made you decide to step away and start your own thing?
I was just getting antsy in what I was doing. So I had actually left the waste company. I got back into transportation and I managed operations in Quebec, Ontario, Michigan, and Ohio. I managed a $65 million cost budget. I made a lot of money. I still don't actually pay myself as much money as I used to make. But I was sitting there and something was missing. I sat down at the table and I said to my wife, I'm like, I'm not happy. She's like, what? And I'm like, no, not with you. Like, I'm not happy doing what I'm doing. So started this conversation of this journey that I wanted to go and do the thing. And actually, before I started Rethink, I actually built a prototype anaerobic digester in my garage and almost blew it up because I'm not an engineer. And so I just wanted to have impact. I had no reason to be unhappy. But I think when you hit a point where you've quote unquote made it, you're like, you look for more. And I'm like, I know that I can do more. And I had this bug and I wanted to create this impact. So that was when the decision was made. The funny thing about this is the idea was that she was going to seek out her next promotion and kind of hold down the fort. We met a little later in life at 34. So we still had a big mortgage and stuff. And so she was going to hold down the fort with the next promotion. And I was going to go and quit my job and start this passion project. And then one day she comes home she was at a conference in Chicago. And she came home. She's like, oh, this agency that supplies service to them. I love them. I want to quit my job and go work for them. And I was like, and so we had a big conversation about that, but we actually did it. So I quit the same year to start my journey. And then she quit and went to work for this agency. And financially, we struggled, the hardest that we ever did. And we're doing fine now, but we were never happier. Like it grew us so much closer of like going through that together. I ran that digester company. It's called Pure Carbon Footprints for about almost a year. And then I was like, I can't do this. I'm in over my head. At the time, I wouldn't have even told anybody about it. I packed it in. I started Rethink originally as a brokerage, just to broker waste. And then it evolved from there.
Okay, so let's move to rethinks. You don't just recycle, you reimagine. So can you explain your process and how you turn waste into value?
So first things first is the cool thing about waste. Everybody has it. So there's just a world of opportunity. And how much value does it bring them versus the money they want to spend? Because sometimes it costs more. And so when we started, actually, we were doing paper shredding and e-waste recycling in an office. My, friends and family, the company my wife worked at, this first customer, we used to collect organics in a pail with a screw top lid. And I don't tell anybody in the city of Toronto. I used to take it home and dump it in my green bin and then wash that bin in my dishwasher. I have a very patient, supportive wife. It,
Well, yeah, a lot of the people do listen to this, by the way,
yeah.
Shane. So,
It started really, really humble. Then somebody comes to you and they say, hey, I have this thing. And the average big waste hauler, they separate cardboard because it's a commodity, it's worth money, and there's a lot of it. And then most of it goes to landfill because it's just most efficient. When you have a big hole in the ground, that every time you put something in, you make more money, it's more financially efficient as well. But people want to divert these things. So, like, random stuff comes to you, and then you have to figure out a way to do it. The struggle is, as we were growing, is you get all these things thrown at you, but you don't have enough volume of anything to make it efficient. One of the first things, we pick up recycling, we bring it to a recycling center, and we pick up organics. And not too long after, we started with an organics recycler where it went to digester. E-waste was pretty common. And then we landed a craft brewer, which is kind of cool because we had a whole bunch of craft brewers. And every week or so, I'd come home with another 6-pack, and my wife's like, another one? I'm like, honey, we got to support the customers, right? So, but what we started doing was, one of them was like, hey, can you feed this stuff to animals? I'm like, that's a good question. So now I got to go find a farmer. And that was pretty early on. And then, so then we went after a whole bunch of craft brewers. So one of the biggest successes is pretty simple. Is we just, I shouldn't say it's pretty simple. You know, your green bin at home, if you're in Toronto or Mississauga, it's a 32-gallon. When you fill that with brew grades, it weighs 100 kilograms. So we can pick them up on a truck, but then we got to consolidate that and get to the farm. So there's some logistics there. So that's one of the really neat things that we do. I think one of the biggest things that I'm proud of and that we're really pushing hard on right now is we did this pilot at this burger shop in Scarborough. We weigh everything and we give a diversion report. And the owner was like, hey, our diversion's 57%. And you said I could put this on social media and say we're sustainable. And, that's not a good number. So I went to the US Composting Conference and learned any packaging like this quick serve restaurant packaging, you can get in a compostable. So we did a pilot, we swapped it out. I built a giant composter in my backyard. Again, a very patient wife. She's like, that's not going to smell it, isn't it? I'm like, no, don't worry. It's going to be fine. And it actually didn't, but I'm lucky. And we composted it. And then we have a promo video at the end where we took the compost and then we mixed it with soil. We put our compost bins outside of the burger shop and we grew lettuce and tomatoes. So this video at the end that we're eating these burgers with the lettuce and tomato on it that I grew. And I'm like, I've never grown anything. It was so cool. And it was like, then accelerated this circular economy. Like, what's more circular than taking organics and turning it into a nutrient dense fertilizer and then growing something out of it and then feeding people, right? And so we've started to do some testing with some big QSRs on this model, quick serve restaurants, because the nature of that kind of waste is just, it's mixed and it doesn't go with a regular MRF for sorting like your blue bin waste and stuff like that. So we could have tremendous impact by setting up with the quick serve restaurants. And I mean, what's more circular than that? Really, it's about keeping that organics. That's why the compost pile's in the back here. It's keeping that organics and giving the nutrients back to feed people for humanity.
I love it. That's so cool. So after all that, it felt to me like, as you were describing that, you did a lot of testing. We're not saying no to anything coming our way. We're just going to figure it out. Where are you at now? Is it mostly organics that you're focusing in on? Or are you still like, if somebody phones you, you go like, yeah, we'll figure that out.
So we're coming on 10 years. We're less like, yes, we'll figure it out. The least we've grown every year is 20%. And now I said we're raising because we've sort of figured it out. That's funny. I was just at the Mars Discovery District Impact Day. There is wicked smart people there. And I joke and say, hey, I'm just a truck driver. So I know how to recycle and divert about 90% of stuff. But there's 2 people that I met there, but she's taking used cooking oil and turning it into cleaning products. So the vision is, when we raise money, is that we're going to handle 90% of this waste, but I'm calling it the Rethink Waste Innovation Accelerator. And so I want to take a bunch of these wicked smart people and bring them in and say, here's the 10%. And here's like the lowest hanging fruit. Figure out what to do with that. And so what I see emerging in this space is there's a hierarchy of food waste because that's the biggest environmental impact. Then the next thing is animals. So we bring brew grains. We had a customer last week had 13 skids of flour, and we brought that to the farm and they make it for animal feed. The next thing, which is very uncommon but is emerging, is industrial product. So using organic waste to make industrial products. And this is like the carbon scale, right? So the most value is up here. And then after that, compost. because it puts nutrients back into the ground. And then after that, anaerobic digestion. And then the last being landfill. So that's the future path to get to a world of no landfill.
That's great. I interviewed another entrepreneur that is taking plastic and making pucks for shampoo, conditioner, moving to body wash, and taking the plastic bottles out of the market by doing that. So there's probably some connection there. I love it. So obviously, AI is on everybody's lips these days. Anybody who's in business is talking about AI. So, what role does AI and technology and innovation play in scaling a business like yours that's built on a physical process?
So we developed our own software 4, 5, 6 years ago. So right now we did this carbon accounting. And so the vision is to like scan the waste with AI or computer vision. And then, there's more energy in butter than there is in lettuce. But nobody's done the work on like the carbon footprint of that butter specifically. So we actually built this prototype with our engineers where it scanned it. It was the vision of what we wanted to do. So the idea is like our carts have RFID on them. At the point right now, our drivers pick up and they weigh it. But the future is they'll scan it. Cart 1, 2, 3, 4 belongs to customer ABC, and then it comes back and then it gets dumped on the conveyor. And then depending on what's on there, we will use AI to say, this is the stuff that's there. This is where it went and automate the carbon accounting for it. But then also we can give that data back to the customer and say, this is what's in your waste. The kitchen is not doing proper, like whatever the case may be, or they're putting things they shouldn't put in there. And this was the vision of that. Now, since then, this model we're talking about with the QSR, so the pitches that we've had to big brand quick serve restaurants, there's multiple companies, but the one that we're talking to is Waste Robotics out of Montreal. And so they have these robot arms and this AI scanner, and then it senses what the thing is, and the robots pick it out. This is in the immediate future. The next year for us, this is one of the reasons we're raising money is to buy this unit. And the idea is instead of most waste companies want to go like door to door, so they might want to pick up a McDonald's and a Subway and a Meridian bank and throw everything in one and it's route density. We'll go around and pick up the QSRs that are on the program. The robots will pick out the plastic and then everything else will go to compost. So we can get them to like 99.5% diversion from landfill. I had this vision of doing it ourselves, but again, people advance that technology. And so this company we've been talking to for a long time, Waste Robotics, like that's the next evolution for us to make it easier and drive down the cost for the diversion.
Yeah, so then you can scale more efficiently than and the current way that you're doing it. And I love that idea of reciprocal relationships are the best relationships in a business environment. And so I think what I heard you say is, and we'll get data that maybe will help the restaurant, as an example, be more efficient and be able to be better with their amount of waste, which is all about how much money they have to pay for all their supplies, right? So I love it. It's great.
100%. As a small business watching, like I have some amazing relationships with my restaurant customers, and I have restaurants that are like one owner, one restaurant, and I have groups that have 17 restaurants, and 33% of the cost is food costs. So if they're putting food in there that they could save and then they're paying us to take it away, it's a waste of money. And I want my customers to thrive, because that helps me thrive.
So I understand you operate in multiple provinces and you work with lots of large corporate partners. So what's your approach to growth and how do you stay mission focused as you scale?
It's an interesting question. So we actually operate across Canada and into the US. And so to grow, because we've built our brand on integrity and honesty, here's a secret. There's some shady characters in the waste business that aren't doing exactly what they say they're doing. And so we show everybody. Some customers in the past said, oh, we asked them for a tour and they wouldn't take us for a tour. So like we'll bring people in, show them exactly what we do, explain it to them. And also there's some really crappy contracts out there in the waste business. And so we've had customers come to us that operate, they're a direct customer that we're physically handling in the Toronto area, the GTA. And they're like, oh, we have a site in Montreal, in Ottawa. We're doing work in Vancouver and Edmonton for them. And then actually we've gone into the States. So we've got 26 sites in the US that we're managing. And so we're in that context, we're brokering the business. So we manage the business, we keep the cost down on the contract side. And then last year we acquired our first company. And that's how all the big companies grew. And so it was one guy, one truck, did grease and oil up in the Barrie area. And we acquired that company. I was like, wow, we just need to do more of that because in the grease trap space, we doubled our monthly revenue. And the great thing about the waste business is it's subscription. So it's repeatable revenue. I was like, wow, we need to do more of that. Vision of the future is to grow through brokerage. And then let's say we have a big base of customers, like Vancouver's probably next for us, like boots on the ground. And so we would look to acquire a small company. And so then we would then merge the business that we're brokering, then the company that we get, and or if we get enough business, then we'll just put trucks on the road. And so that's our vision to expand. And I'm extremely ambitious. Like, on my LinkedIn, it says my mission is to divert 1 billion tons of waste. So I'm going to have to grow a multi-billion-dollar company in order to do that. And so that's the vision of what we're doing.
And what kind of culture, like how important is culture in this process to you? And what do you do as the owner and the leader to create culture in your organization that's different? I heard you say others in the industry might not live to the same set of values that you do.
It's about putting in checks and balances. We have 18 employees right now. And going back to the discussion of hard work, my son's 13 and he's come in and he's sorted recycling. I grew up single mom, housing. I had not an easy life. And so I've not typically been the most empathetic person in the world. I think that's maybe because of the challenges that I have in life. Whenever I'm at my worst and I'm less empathetic, I have to remember to go to a place of gratitude. And so it's been probably 2 years since I've been on a truck myself. And, it was like minus 14 with the wind chill the other day. And we got people out there doing that. And the job is hard. And so I have to remember to be grateful for what I have. And so the culture that I want is, listen, you got to work hard and we will appreciate and promote you. We're a living wage employer. And we were in Ajax and we moved to Toronto and it went from $19 an hour to $23 an hour. And then the next year it went up again and went up again. It's going up again in January. And I'm not going to lie, like when that happened, we went from 19 to 23. I'm like, how am I going to do that? Like we're not making $1 gazillion. And we moved to Toronto. There's a bigger labor pool. And we started to find more applicants, better applicants. But when living wage goes up, so I think it's going up $1 or $1.10 this year, everybody gets a $1.10 raise because I don't want people that have been working for me for 3 years making similar to the people that have just started. Like that's important to me. So that is one thing I'm adamant about is that tenure should account for something. It's not everything, but it should account for something. So it's work hard, show up every day, and we're going to take care of you. Here's a really important thing that just occurred to me. This year, I tried to hire an operations manager and I had a master's degree person, somebody with a business administration degree, and somebody in the process of doing their PhD. And we tried them all. None of them made it. There was a guy that started working for me in February that worked his face off, never said no. And so I sat down and I said, do you want to take a kick at this can? I said, I'll teach you the business side of things, just like me. Like I'm a high school dropout. I had somebody teach me the business side of it. I'm like, do you want a computer? He's like, no. I said, okay, we'll get you a computer. And this guy, I bought him the book, Unreasonable Hospitality. I'm like, we're in the back alleys doing grease traps and picking up waste for some amazing restaurants. Just because we're in the back alley, so integrity, like this is the culture thing, is we need to act like we're serving a Michelin star dinner out front. And the things that this guy has done since then is just amazing. And so that's the value of the lesson in the culture. And it's the hard workers need to get promoted and make more money and excel and succeed.
That's amazing. Thank you very much for sharing that story. I love it. To be successful, it's just you got to be willing to work at being the best you can possibly be on a lot of levels as a human being, as a leader, as a colleague, as a customer, as the whole thing. So that's great. So I understand that you become the net negative in greenhouse gas emissions, creating a net positive impact on the planet. So that is incredible. So can you walk us through how you achieve that and what it means for the industry?
Yeah. So, I've got a team of people that did a lot of research. We have 30% of our fleet is electric. And so electricity has a carbon footprint. The building, the vehicles has a carbon footprint. The biggest amount of carbon footprint that we have is that we still have big diesel trucks. And then by, say, feeding the brew grains, to cows. We're picking up, we're burning diesel, then we're consolidating, then we're transporting to the farm. And say in the case of plastics, plastic's got a bad rap and part of the pun, but if you take plastic away, shrink wrap, a lot of food is going to go bad, right? And so we work with a company in Listowel, Ontario. So we pick the stuff up, bring it to our facility in Etobicoke. We're hand sorting it right now. Plastic gets baled and gets sent off to them. And actually, they have a company called CPLAS. So that company is EFS. They recycle it into like a nurdle, I think it's called, like the raw material, the plastic. And then they bring it to Exiplas in Sarnia, and then they make another product by not shipping it overseas or shipping it to a landfill. And then the other part of that carbon footprint is by using recycled plastic, you save 66% of the carbon footprint. So we account for that savings, and that's how we get to the net negative. So really, the Coles notes are we divert so much waste from landfill and put it back into the circular economy that we have a carbon negative so much that it offsets our diesel trucks.
And the technology, you have to use diesel trucks because that's what you have to use, right? Like you can do electric in some parts, but I'm sure some parts of your operation, you just need that horsepower.
Well, and so Peterbilt just released a new line, but the capital is crazy. I can get a truck for 150 grand or 500 grand, and the savings on the diesel doesn't offset it. We're not quite there on the cost. The technology is there. The cost is not quite there yet.
That's great. So what's next for your organization? So exciting.
Next is we just started working with a farm. So there's this company that takes food waste and puts it into an animal feed program. And then, so we've actually just set up this in-vessel composter that we bought, and we're going to start this composting pilot of this compostable packaging, and then raising funds to buy a transfer station in Toronto. So a transfer station is collect the waste, you bring it here, you put it on those big ugly trailers that go to Michigan. So it's to buy that, but then make it zero waste to landfill. So to transform that transfer station into this waste innovation accelerator.
You sound like a Canadian enterprise that every levels of government need to be wanting to invest in to help you scale, to grow your business, to you just tick, tick, tick all the boxes. So congratulations on how far you've come and excited about your future, where you're going.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed this conversation with Shane. At Meridian, we're proud to support entrepreneurs like Shane, people who are creating solutions that strengthen communities and make a meaningful impact. Rethink Resource shows that sustainability isn't just about big ideas, it's about execution, partnerships, and a willingness to keep learning and improving. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to follow Small Business Big Impact on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.